Every morning, before the employees arrived, an old janitor quietly cleaned the building. Same gray uniform, same old shoes, same tired face. People barely looked at him, and when they did, it was usually with annoyance. "Hey, old man, clean this properly. You missed a spot. Hurry up." Nobody asked his name. Nobody cared. To them, he was just a janitor. Invisible, replaceable. His name was Kareem. He arrived before sunrise every day, cleaned hallways, fixed small problems quietly, picked up trash people purposely ignored, and through all of it, he remained calm, never arguing, never defending himself, never reacting to disrespect, which only made some employees mock him more, especially the younger workers. They laughed at his old phone, his cheap lunch, his quiet voice. One employee named Rustam was the worst. Young, confident, arrogant. The kind of man who measured human value by money and appearance. "Imagine being this old and still cleaning floors," Rustam joked loudly one morning. Several employees laughed immediately. Kareem simply continued mopping silently. Rustam smirked proudly, because humiliating powerless people made him feel important. "What's your salary anyway?" Rustam continued mockingly. "Enough for bread?" More laughter. But Kareem only smiled faintly, not offended, almost amused. And strangely, that calmness irritated Rustam even more, because Creole people enjoy reactions, but Kareem never gave them one. One rainy afternoon, Rustam accidentally spilled coffee across the office floor, then looked directly at Kareem and snapped his fingers. "Cleaner." Not sir, not please, just cleaner. Several people nearby laughed uncomfortably. Even they felt the disrespect was too much. Kareem slowly walked over, quiet as always, then bent down and began cleaning the mess. Rustam leaned closer and whispered smugly, "You should thank people like me. Without us, you'd be nothing." Kareem paused very slightly, then looked up calmly and asked, "Do you really believe that?" Rustam laughed instantly. "Of course." Kareem nodded slowly, then continued cleaning without another word. But nearby, an older secretary watched the interaction carefully, and unlike the others, she looked nervous, very nervous, because she knew something nobody else in that office knew, something that would change everything. The old janitor was not just a janitor, and soon the entire company would find out. The next morning, everything felt normal. Employees entered the building half awake. Coffee cups, phone calls, complaints, deadlines. The usual noise of office life. And like always, Kareem quietly cleaned the lobby floor before sunrise. Invisible. Ignored. Or at least, that's what everyone believed. Rustam walked in loudly with two coworkers beside him. Expensive suit, perfect haircut, confident smile. The kind of confidence people borrow from temporary success. As he passed Kareem, he deliberately dropped a piece of trash near the freshly cleaned floor, then smirked. "Oops." One coworker laughed nervously. Another looked uncomfortable. Even they were beginning to feel Rustam's behavior was becoming cruel. But Rustam enjoyed it too much to stop, because disrespecting weaker people made him feel powerful. Kareem quietly picked up the trash without reacting. Still calm. Always calm. And somehow, that calmness made Rustam feel strangely irritated, as if the old man knew something he didn't. Later that afternoon, a rumor suddenly spread across the office. Fast. Whisper to whisper. Desk to desk. "The owner is coming tomorrow." Instant tension filled the building, because the company owner almost never visited personally. Nobody even knew what he looked like. Only upper management had occasional contact with him, and even that was rare. He's coming unexpectedly. They say someone might get fired. Maybe there's a major inspection. Employees immediately panicked. Desks became cleaner. People acted more professional. Managers suddenly became polite. Even Rustam adjusted his behavior slightly, but only toward important people, not Kareem. Never Kareem. Meanwhile, the older secretary named Saida sat quietly at her desk watching everyone, nervous, especially when her eyes drifted toward Kareem, because unlike everyone else, she knew the truth. Years ago, before the company became massive, she worked directly under the founder himself, a brilliant businessman named Karimov, a man known for disappearing unexpectedly to observe employees secretly, to see who people truly were when they thought power wasn't watching. And the moment she first saw the janitor months ago, she recognized him immediately. Older now, simpler clothes, gray hair, but the same eyes, sharp, observant, calm. The company owner himself was working inside his own building disguised as a janitor, and nobody realized it, not even management. At first, Saida wanted to reveal the truth immediately, but Kareem stopped her privately. "Don't say anything," he told her calmly. "I want to see people clearly." And now, after months of watching employees mock him, ignore him, and disrespect him, Saida feared what would happen next. Because one thing became painfully obvious. Many people in that company respected status, not humanity, especially Rustam. That evening, after most employees left, Kareem quietly entered a private elevator using a hidden access card, the same elevator ordinary workers were forbidden from using. A young security guard noticed it accidentally. His eyes widened instantly, because only executive-level access cards worked there. The guard stared in shock as the elevator doors slowly closed. And for the first time, someone inside the building began suspecting the impossible. The old janitor was not who he pretended to be. By the next morning, the atmosphere inside the company felt strange, different, tense, because rumors spread quickly in offices, especially dangerous rumors. The young security guard barely slept all night. He kept replaying the same image in his mind, the old janitor using the executive elevator. Impossible, completely impossible. At first, he thought maybe it was a mistake, but executive cards required special authorization, and the system never failed. So why would a janitor have access? The question slowly poisoned his thoughts. By morning, he finally shared what he saw with another employee quietly, then another, and another. Within hours, whispers moved through the building like electricity. "Something is strange about the cleaner. I heard he has executive access. No way. Maybe he used someone else's card. Or maybe he's related to management." Theories spread everywhere, but nobody dared ask Kareem directly because despite his humble appearance, there was suddenly something intimidating about him, something people hadn't noticed before. The calmness, the confidence, the way he never reacted emotionally no matter how badly people treated him. And now, employees started remembering uncomfortable moments, moments that suddenly looked very different. Like senior managers occasionally greeted Kareem politely, very politely, or how maintenance requests he mentioned were solved unusually fast, or how security guards always treated him with unexpected respect. Small things, invisible things, until now. Meanwhile, Rustam laughed at all the rumors. "People are stupid," he scoffed loudly during lunch. "He's a cleaner, not a millionaire." Several coworkers forced nervous laughs. But unlike before, nobody sounded confident anymore because doubt had entered the room, and doubt changes behavior quickly. That afternoon, Rustam walked into the lobby while talking arrogantly on his phone. Without looking, he bumped directly into Kareem carrying cleaning supplies. The bucket fell. Water spread across the polished floor. Silence filled the lobby instantly. Several employees froze nearby, watching, waiting. Rustam looked down at the mess with irritation, then snapped angrily, "Watch where you're going," even though the accident was clearly his fault. Kareem remained calm as always. "I apologize," he said quietly. But Rustam wasn't finished, because arrogance becomes dangerous when people think there are no consequences. "You know what your problem is?" Rustam said loudly. "You people should learn your place." The lobby became completely silent. Several employees looked horrified now. Even Saida stood up sharply from her desk, because deep down, she knew exactly what disaster was coming. Kareem slowly looked at Rustam, long, carefully, and for the very first time, his calm expression changed slightly. Not anger, disappointment, deep disappointment. Then he quietly asked, "And where exactly is my place?" Rustam smirked arrogantly. "On the floor, cleaning after successful people." Complete silence. You could hear the rain outside against the windows. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed comfortably, because something about Kareem's eyes suddenly changed the entire atmosphere. The old man slowly bent down, picked up the fallen mop, then straightened calmly, and when he spoke again, his voice sounded different somehow, stronger, sharper, dangerously calm. "Be very careful," Kareem said softly. "Success can disappear faster than pride." Rustam immediately rolled his eyes. "Whatever, old man." Then he walked away laughing. But nobody else laughed this time, because for the first time, fear had entered the building. Real fear. And deep inside, many employees began realizing something terrifying. They may have spent months humiliating the wrong person. The announcement came at exactly 4:30 p.m. Short, cold, unexpected. All employees must attend the executive meeting tomorrow morning. Mandatory, no exceptions. Instant panic spread across the company because mandatory meetings involving the owner never meant anything good, especially surprise meetings. People whispered nervously across every department. Someone's definitely getting fired. Maybe the company is being sold. Maybe management is under investigation. Nobody knew the truth, but everyone felt tension. Heavy tension. Meanwhile, Kareem quietly continued cleaning the empty conference hall alone that evening, slowly moving chairs into perfect order, adjusting the projector, wiping the long executive table carefully, as if tomorrow were just another ordinary day. But Saida watched him from the doorway silently, nervous, because she knew exactly what tomorrow would become, a reckoning, not just for Rustam, for everyone. "Are you really going to reveal yourself?" she asked quietly. Kareem continued adjusting chairs calmly. "Yes." No hesitation, no emotion, just certainty. Saida lowered her voice carefully. "Some of them treated you horribly." Kareem nodded slowly. "I know." Still calm, and somehow that calmness frightened her more than anger would have. Because disappointed people are often more dangerous than angry ones. That night, almost nobody in the office slept peacefully, especially Rustam, not because he feared consequences, because secretly he feared uncertainty. The rumors about Kareem had entered his mind too, and once doubt enters arrogance, confidence begins cracking. The next morning, employees arrived unusually early. Formal clothes, forced smiles, tense voices. everyone trying to look professional. Even people who normally ignored Kareem now greeted him awkwardly, too politely, too suddenly. But Kareem responded exactly the same way he always had, quietly, respectfully, without showing anything. That only made employees more nervous. At 9 sharp, everyone entered the massive executive conference hall. Managers, assistants, department heads, interns, even security staff. Over 100 employees filled the room anxiously. Rustam sat near the front, pretending confidence, but his leg bounced nervously under the table, because deep down, his instincts were screaming that something was wrong, very wrong. The stage at the front remained empty. Minutes passed, whispers filled the room. Then suddenly, the side doors opened, and complete silence fell instantly. Because entering the room was the old janitor, Kareem, still wearing the same gray uniform, still carrying the same calm expression. Employees stared in confusion. Some even looked irritated. "Why is the cleaner here?" someone whispered. Rustam laughed nervously. Maybe he got lost. But then something happened that froze the entire room. The executive board members stood up immediately, every single one of them, respectfully, completely silently, and one by one, they lowered their heads slightly toward Kareem, like employees greeting their superior. The room went completely still. People looked around in confusion, shock, fear, disbelief, because suddenly the impossible became real. Kareem calmly walked toward the center stage. No hurry, no dramatic expression, just quiet confidence, the kind of confidence that comes from real power. He placed the cleaning gloves slowly onto the table, then removed the old janitor badge from his chest, and finally looked directly at the employees, especially Rustam, who now looked completely pale. "My name," Kareem said calmly into the microphone, "is Kareem Karimov." Silence. Heavy silence. "I founded this company 32 years ago." The entire room froze, completely. Some employees literally stopped breathing. Others stared in horror, because the old janitor they mocked for months was the billionaire owner of the entire company. And suddenly, every cruel word, every joke, every act of disrespect came crashing back into everyone's minds at once, especially Rustam's, who now looked like a man realizing his life was about to collapse. Silence filled the conference hall. Not ordinary silence, the kind of silence created by shock, real shock. Over 100 employees sat frozen in their seats, staring at Kareem, the old janitor, the man they ignored, mocked, disrespected, humiliated, now standing calmly at the front of the room as the founder and owner of the entire company. Nobody knew where to look. Some employees lowered their eyes in shame immediately. Others stared at Kareem with open disbelief. But no one looked worse than Rustam. His face had lost all color. The confident smile that once never left him, completely gone. Because in one horrifying moment, he realized something brutal. He hadn't humiliated a powerless old cleaner. He humiliated the most powerful person in the company, repeatedly, publicly, cruelly. And now, every single moment replayed inside his head like punishment. "Cleaner, you people should know your place. Without us, you'd be nothing." The memories hit him one after another, sharp, merciless. And for the first time in a very long while, Rustam felt true fear. Not fear of embarrassment, fear of consequences. Meanwhile, Kareem stood calmly at the front of the room, observing everyone quietly. No anger, no shouting, no dramatic revenge. And somehow, that calmness made everything worse. Because angry people sometimes lose control, but calm people make decisions carefully. I spent the last 8 months inside this building, Kareem said quietly, not as an owner, as a cleaner. Employees remained completely silent. Nobody dared move. I wanted to understand something, he continued. I wanted to see how people behave when they think nobody important is watching. Those words landed heavily across the room, because suddenly, everyone understood the real purpose behind the disguise. This wasn't about cleaning floors. It was a test, a human test, and many people failed it badly. Kareem slowly walked across the stage, his old janitor shoes echoing softly through the silent hall. Some employees treated me with kindness. He nodded slightly toward a few nervous workers. They greeted me every morning. They said thank you. They treated me like a human being. Several employees looked emotional immediately, because suddenly small moments mattered enormously. Then Kareem stopped walking and looked directly at Rustam. The entire room followed his gaze instantly. Rustam's hands trembled slightly now. He tried speaking, but nothing came out, because no excuse sounded possible anymore. You, Kareem said calmly, not loudly, not angrily, somehow worse. I watched you very carefully. Rustam swallowed hard. You are intelligent, ambitious, talented. For one brief second, hope flickered inside Rustam's chest. Then Kareem continued, but arrogance destroyed your character. The hope disappeared instantly, because deep down, Rustam knew it was true. You believed respect belongs only to successful people. You believed money makes someone more human than others. Kareem's voice remained painfully calm. But real character appears in how you treat people who cannot benefit you. Complete silence. Some employees looked near tears now, because everyone in the room knew this wasn't only about Rustam anymore. It was about them all, their behavior, their values, their humanity. Rustam finally stood up shakily. Sir, His voice cracked immediately, because for the first time in his life, confidence abandoned him completely. I'm sorry. The words sounded desperate, small, weak. Kareem looked at him for a long moment, then asked quietly, Are you sorry because you hurt a cleaner, or because the cleaner turned out to be powerful? The question shattered the room, because nobody could ignore the truth inside it. Rustam lowered his eyes instantly, unable to answer, because deep down, he knew the answer himself, and that truth humiliated him more than public exposure ever could. Kareem turned away slowly, disappointed, not hateful, just disappointed. And somehow, that disappointment hurt more than anger ever would, because anger feels temporary, disappointment feels final. Nobody moved after the meeting ended, not immediately. Employees remained frozen in their seats, as if standing up would somehow make everything more real, because reality had changed completely. The old cleaner they ignored every day was the man who built the entire company, the billionaire owner, the founder, the person whose signature controlled every career in that building. And suddenly, small moments from the past 8 months became unbearable memories. People remembered walking past Kareem without greeting him, ignoring him when he cleaned around their desks, speaking to him impatiently, treating him like part of the furniture. And now, every memory felt ugly, painfully ugly. Some employees quietly cried afterward, not because they feared losing their jobs, because shame finally reached them, real shame. Meanwhile, Rustam sat completely alone in the empty conference room long after everyone left, still frozen, still pale. His hands trembled uncontrollably now, because for the first time in his life, he truly saw himself clearly. And what he saw disgusted him, not because he insulted a billionaire, because he insulted a human being, a harmless old man, someone who never hurt him,
someone who always responded calmly despite humiliation. And suddenly, Rustam realized something terrifying. If Kareem had actually been poor, he would have treated him exactly the same way, maybe worse. That truth broke something inside him, completely. Across the company, the atmosphere transformed overnight. People became quieter, more careful, not just because of fear, because the illusion around status shattered. The illusion that expensive suits automatically mean importance. The illusion that cleaners, guards, assistants, and drivers somehow matter less. Employees started noticing things they ignored before: the cleaning staff waking before sunrise every day, security guards standing for hours silently, receptionists dealing with rude people politely, invisible workers holding the entire company together quietly. And for the first time, many employees felt genuine guilt, not performance guilt, human guilt. Saida watched the changes silently from her desk. Part of her felt relieved, another part felt sad, because it took fear and humiliation for many people to discover basic humanity. That afternoon, Kareem returned to the lobby again wearing the same janitor uniform, and instantly, everyone reacted differently. Employees stood straighter, voices softened, people greeted him respectfully, too respectfully, almost desperately. "Good afternoon, sir. Can I help you with that? Please let me carry it." Kareem noticed everything immediately. Of course he did. He spent 8 months studying human behavior, and now he was watching fear disguise itself as respect. But fear and respect are not the same thing, not even close. One young intern approached him nervously near the elevator. "I just wanted to apologize," she whispered sincerely. "I should have treated you kindly even before knowing who you were." Kareem looked at her quietly, then smiled faintly for the first time that day, because sincerity sounds different, lighter, cleaner, more honest. "Thank you," he said softly. And that tiny moment spread quickly through the building too, because employees slowly realized something important. Kareem wasn't punishing people for ignorance. He was judging character, real character. That realization terrified many workers even more, especially management, because titles suddenly meant nothing. Only behavior mattered now. Late that evening, Rustam finally forced himself towards Kareem's private office upstairs. Every step felt heavier than the last, because this wasn't just fear anymore. It was shame, deep shame, the kind people cannot escape from changing clothes or positions. The secretary quietly opened the office door for him, and Rustam froze immediately seeing Kareem inside. Not in janitor clothes now, but in an elegant dark suit, sitting calmly behind the massive executive desk. The transformation looked surreal, almost unreal. Yet strangely, Kareem's eyes looked exactly the same: calm, observant, wise. Rustam suddenly realized something painful. The expensive suit changed nothing about Kareem, but power had changed everything about himself. And maybe that was the real difference between them. Rustam stood silently near the office door, unable to move, unable to speak, because suddenly, everything about the room felt overwhelming. The massive windows overlooking the city, the expensive artwork, the polished black desk, the quiet authority filling the space. And sitting calmly in the center of it all was Kareem, the same old man he once called cleaner. The memory burned inside him like poison now. Kareem looked up from the documents on his desk quietly, not angry, not surprised, as if he already knew Rustam would come. "Sit down," he said calmly. Rustam obeyed immediately, not out of fear alone, because for the first time, he genuinely respected the man in front of him, and that realization hurt deeply too, because respect arrived far too late. For several seconds, neither spoke.
The silence inside the office felt heavy, not hostile, just honest. Finally, Rustam lowered his eyes and whispered, "I'm ashamed of myself." Kareem remained quiet. "I thought I was better than people." His voice cracked slightly. "I judged everyone by money, status, appearance." He laughed bitterly at himself. "And I never realized how ugly that made me." Kareem watched him carefully, not coldly, carefully, as if studying whether the regret was real. And strangely, Rustam hoped it was obvious, because this was not fear speaking anymore. Fear had already passed. This was something worse, self-awareness. The painful moment someone finally sees themselves clearly. "I humiliated you," Rustam continued quietly, "again and again, and you never even defended yourself." Kareem finally spoke softly. "I didn't need to." Rustam looked up slowly, because suddenly he understood something terrifying. Kareem already knew who he was, already knew his own value. Only insecure people desperately prove importance to others. And for the first time in his life, Rustam realized how deeply insecure he actually was. All his arrogance, all his mocking behavior, all his obsession with status, it wasn't confidence, it was weakness hiding behind pride. "I'm sorry," Rustam whispered again. This time, the words sounded different, smaller, realer. Kareem leaned back quietly, then asked the same dangerous question once more. "If I truly were just a cleaner, would you still feel sorry?" Rustam closed his eyes immediately, because there was no escaping the truth anymore. At first, no, he wouldn't have cared at all, and admitting that truth destroyed him internally. Tears unexpectedly filled his eyes, not dramatic tears, humiliating tears, the kind that appear when pride finally collapses. "No," he admitted weakly. Silence filled the office instantly, brutal silence. But strangely, Kareem nodded slowly, because honesty, even ugly honesty, is still better than lies. "That answer," Kareem said quietly, "is the first honest thing you've said since entering this office." Rustam lowered his head completely, ashamed, because he knew it was true. Kareem stood slowly and walked toward the giant window overlooking the city. "You remind me of myself when I was younger," he said suddenly. Rustam looked up in shock. Kareem smiled faintly. "That surprise you?" Rustam nodded weakly. Kareem folded his hands behind his back thoughtfully. "When I built my first company, I became arrogant too. I thought success made me superior. I thought poor people simply worked less. I judged everyone." Rustam listened silently, completely stunned. "Then one day, my father became sick, and I watched wealthy people ignore him because he looked poor." Silence. "That day changed my life." Kareem slowly turned toward him again. "Money reveals character. It doesn't create it." Those words settled deeply inside Rustam's chest, because suddenly he understood the true lesson behind everything. Kareem didn't disguise himself to catch disrespect. He disguised himself to discover humanity. And many people, including Rustam, failed badly. "I can't erase what I did," Rustam whispered. "No," Kareem agreed calmly, "you can't." The truth hurt, but strangely, Rustam appreciated the honesty now, because real growth begins only when excuses die. Kareem returned to his desk slowly, then said something unexpected. "But people are not defined only by their worst moment." Rustam looked up instantly, hope mixed with confusion. Kareem studied him carefully. "The real question is,
What kind of man will you become after this? And suddenly, for the first time in years, Rustam stopped thinking about career, money, status, promotion, and started thinking about character, real character, maybe for the very first time in his life.
Something changed inside the company after that week. Not just policies, people. The atmosphere, the energy inside the building itself. It was subtle at first. Small moments, tiny differences. But over time, those tiny differences changed everything. Employees started greeting cleaning staff by name, security guards received respect instead of impatience, receptionists stopped being treated like invisible furniture. People held elevators open more often, said thank you more sincerely, listened more carefully. And strangely, productivity improved too. Because workplaces built on fear create tension, but workplaces built on dignity create loyalty. Karim understood that long ago. Most people didn't until now. The company introduced new internal training programs soon after, not about sales, not about profits, about character, leadership, respect, human behavior. At first, many employees thought it was unnecessary, too emotional, too idealistic. But Karim personally led the first meeting himself, and nobody forgot what he said. Success without humanity is failure wearing an expensive suit. The room remained completely silent afterward, because everyone knew those words came from experience, not theory. Meanwhile, Rustam changed more than anyone, not immediately, not perfectly, but genuinely. The old version of him still appeared sometimes. Impatience, pride, ego. Years of behavior don't disappear overnight. But now, he noticed those traits, and awareness changes people slowly. One morning, a new cleaning employee accidentally dropped supplies near Rustam's desk. The young man panicked immediately. "I'm sorry, sir." Months earlier, Rustam would have exploded angrily, without hesitation. But now, he saw something different. Fear. The same fear people once felt around him constantly. And suddenly, he hated that version of himself. "It's okay," Rustam said quietly, then bent down and helped pick everything up. The cleaner stared in shock, because kindness from powerful people surprises those who rarely receive it. That realization stayed with Rustam all day. Meanwhile, employees across the company slowly began noticing something else, too. Karim never punished people publicly, never humiliated anyone, even after everything. And that confused many workers initially, because most powerful people use fear to maintain authority. But Karim used disappointment, expectations, standards, and somehow that inspired deeper change. Because fear changes behavior temporarily, but self-awareness changes identity. One afternoon, Saida entered Karim's office carrying reports, then smiled faintly, seeing something unusual. Karim himself was watering a small office plant near the window. The billionaire owner, still doing tiny, ordinary things himself. "You could make someone else do that," Saida teased lightly. Karim smiled calmly. "Yes, but then I might forget how." Simple answer, powerful meaning. Because that was exactly the danger he spent his life fighting against. Forgetting humanity, forgetting humility, forgetting that titles are temporary, while character follows people forever. Weeks later, the company held its annual corporate celebration. Huge event, luxury hotel, hundreds of guests, executives, investors, media. And for the first time, Karim invited every cleaning worker, security guard, cafeteria employee, and assistant to sit among executives equally, not separately, equally. Some investors looked uncomfortable initially. Karim noticed immediately, then calmly moved his own chair beside the oldest cleaning employee in the company, and suddenly, nobody dared complain. Because real leadership doesn't announce values, it demonstrates them. That night, Rustam stood quietly near the balcony, overlooking the city lights, watching employees laugh together below. And for the first time in years, he felt something strange. Not ambition, not jealousy, peace. Because he no longer spent every second trying to feel superior to others. And without realizing it, he finally became someone better. Not richer, not more important, better. Rustam stood silently near the office door, unable to move, unable to speak, because suddenly, everything about the room felt overwhelming. The massive windows overlooking the city, the expensive artwork, the polished black desk, the quiet authority filling the space. And sitting calmly in the center of it all was Karim, the same old man he once called cleaner. The memory burned inside him like poison now. Karim looked up from the documents on his desk quietly, not angry, not surprised, as if he already knew Rustam would come. "Sit down," he said calmly. Rustam obeyed immediately, not out of fear alone, because for the first time, he genuinely respected the man in front of him, and that realization hurt deeply too, because respect arrived far too late. For several seconds, neither spoke. The silence inside the office felt heavy, not hostile, just honest. Finally, Rustam lowered his eyes and whispered, "I'm ashamed of myself." Karim remained quiet. "I thought I was better than people." His voice cracked slightly. "I judged everyone by money, status, appearance." He laughed bitterly at himself. "And I never realized how ugly that made me." Karim watched him carefully, not coldly, carefully, as if studying whether the regret was real. And strangely, Rustam hoped it was obvious, because this was not fear speaking anymore. Fear had already passed. This was something worse, self-awareness. The painful moment someone finally sees themselves clearly. "I humiliated you," Rustam continued quietly, "again and again, and you never even defended yourself." Karim finally spoke softly. "I didn't need to." Rustam looked up slowly, because suddenly he understood something terrifying. Karim already knew who he was, already knew his own value. Only insecure people desperately prove importance to others. And for the first time in his life, Rustam realized how deeply insecure he actually was. All his arrogance, all his mocking behavior, all his obsession with status, it wasn't confidence, it was weakness hiding behind pride. "I'm sorry," Rustam whispered again. This time, the words sounded different, smaller, realer. Karim leaned back quietly, then asked the same dangerous question once more. "If I truly were just a cleaner, would you still feel sorry?" Rustam closed his eyes immediately, because there was no escaping the truth anymore. At first, no, he wouldn't have cared at all, and admitting that truth destroyed him internally. Tears unexpectedly filled his eyes, not dramatic tears, humiliating tears, the kind that appear when pride finally collapses. "No," he admitted weakly. Silence filled the office instantly, brutal silence. But strangely, Karim nodded slowly, because honesty, even ugly honesty, is still better than lies. "That answer," Karim said quietly, "is the first honest thing you've said since entering this office." Rustam lowered his head completely, ashamed.
because he knew it was true. Kareem stood slowly and walked toward the giant window overlooking the city. "You remind me of myself when I was younger," he said suddenly. Rustam looked up in shock. Kareem smiled faintly. "That surprise you?" Rustam nodded weakly. Kareem folded his hands behind his back thoughtfully. "When I built my first company, I became arrogant too. I thought success made me superior. I thought poor people simply worked less. I judged everyone." Rustam listened silently, completely stunned. "Then one day, my father became sick, and I watched wealthy people ignore him because he looked poor." Silence. "That day changed my life." Kareem slowly turned toward him again. "Money reveals character. It doesn't create it." Those words settled deeply inside Rustam's chest, because suddenly he understood the true lesson behind everything. Kareem didn't disguise himself to catch disrespect. He disguised himself to discover humanity. And many people, including Rustam, failed badly. "I can't erase what I did," Rustam whispered. "No," Kareem agreed calmly, "you can't." The truth hurt, but strangely, Rustam appreciated the honesty now, because real growth begins only when excuses die. Kareem returned to his desk slowly, then said something unexpected. "But people are not defined only by their worst moment." Rustam looked up instantly, hope mixed with confusion. Kareem studied him carefully. "The real question is, what kind of man will you become after this?" And suddenly, for the first time in years, Rustam stopped thinking about career, money, status, promotion, and started thinking about character, real character, maybe for the very first time in his life.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, because sometimes the strongest lessons come from the people the world ignores most.